The air in the Directorate's Bureau of Xenobiological Integration was always cold, sterile, and silent. She sat within her assigned consultation chamber, the smooth ceramic walls, a familiar prison. Her species, the Galath, were prized across the galaxy for their empathic resonance, their graceful forms, and most of all, for the profound genetic stability they imparted to offspring. They were the ultimate breeders, an honor that had become a chain. For cycles, she had submitted to pairings with dignified, emotionally placid species, all to produce exemplary hybrid citizens for the Directorate. But the newest mandate was different. It demanded the inclusion of humanity. The files on humans were a terrifying paradox. They were a species of breathtaking contradiction, capable of staggering artistic beauty and unrestrained violence, of deep compassion and cold cruelty. Their history was not one of serene logical progression, but a tempest of wars, renaissance, collapse, and rebirth. Their emotions were not gentle tides, but rogue waves. To bond with one, the Bureau suggested, was to tie oneself to a storm. The very idea of a human's touch, a human's passion, a human's unpredictable genetic legacy filling her womb, filled her with a deep, instinctive dread. She feared letting a human breed her. Her objections were noted and politely overruled. The Directorate sought resilience, adaptability, a certain galvanizing spark humanity possessed. Compliance was not optional, so she prepared for her first assigned match with a sense of descending doom. He was not what she expected. The man who entered the neutral meeting space was not a roaring barbarian. He was tall for a human, his frame lean under the simple gray Directorate tunic, his posture relaxed but not careless. His face was marked with a fine pale line along the jaw scar from no surgical procedure. His eyes, a shade somewhere between the earth and the sky, watched her with an unsettling directness. He did not simper or preen. He simply gave a small, curt nod. "Ma'am?" They spoke in halting, official phrases. He was a soldier, recently discharged from service in the perimeter conflicts. He spoke little of it. She sensed a vast quiet within him, not an emptiness, but a disciplined stillness, like a forest holding its breath. He asked her about the subtle silver patterns on her own skin, not as a scientist would, but with a simple, "Do they mean anything?" It was the first time anyone in the Bureau had asked. The meetings continued, a mandated courtship. She learned he appreciated the structured beauty of orbital mechanics, could recite epic human poetry about loss and stars, and could sit in a companionable silence that felt, strangely, not like absence, but like a shared space. Once, a service droid malfunctioned, its motivator whining shrilly. She flinched, a wave of discordant noise scraping her sensitive nerves. In a fluid motion too fast to follow, he had moved, not attacking, but his hands finding precise points on the droid's casing. A twist, a muted click, and the shriek died. The silence that followed was a gift. He looked at her, not at his handiwork. Sorry about that. Slowly, her fear began to metamorphose. It did not vanish, but it turned from a solid wall into a mist, through which she began to perceive the man. He was controlled, yes, but the control was a conscious choice, a sheath over a blade of immense feeling. He spoke of his soldiering not with pride, but with a heavy specificity. "My job was to protect the people in my unit," he said. Sometimes that meant building bridges. Sometimes it meant holding a line. The way he said, "hold a line," made her understand it was not a metaphor. It was a weight he had carried and had now, voluntarily, set down. The turning point came during an excursion to a designated botanical biosphere. It was meant to be a pleasant exercise in mutual appreciation of a controlled ecosystem. They were walking along a path between stands of Terran ferns when the world exploded. It was not an attack, but a catastrophic failure in the biosphere's atmospheric processors. A containment field buckled, and a section of the dome, stressed by the internal shift, shattered. Hurricane-force winds screamed into the tranquil garden. The shockwave threw her to the ground, and a torrent of debris shattered branches. Soil and screaming metal filled the air. Disorientation was total. The empathic onslaught of panic from other visitors was a physical blow. She curled in on herself, overwhelmed, waiting for the final impact. It did not come. Instead, a solid warmth covered her. He was there, his body a shield arched over hers. He did not cower. He moved. Pulling her up, he half carried, half dragged her across the raging chaos. His eyes scanned not in terror, but with a terrifying, focused calm. He saw the path of least danger where she saw only destruction. A shard of composite plating, sharp as a blade, spun towards them. He shifted, taking the impact on his shoulder with a grunt she felt more than heard. He did not stumble. He pushed forward. He found it not by sight, but by instinct, a service alcove, a hard shell of maintenance machinery. He shoved her into the narrow space, then turned his back to the opening, his arms braced against the sides, his body the final door. The storm raged against him. She watched his back, the muscles corded with strain, his tunic darkening where the shard had struck. He became a statue of defiance, unmoving, unyielding. The tempest could not move him. He held the line dot in that alcove, pressed against the steady, straining heat of him. Surrounded by the roar of oblivion, her last vestige of fear dissolved. This was not the uncontrolled violence she had dreaded. This was a will sculpted into purpose. This was rage and compassion, forged into a single tool, protection. He was not a storm to be feared, but a shelter built to withstand one. The emergency passed. Stabilization fields engaged, and the wind died. Silence returned, broken by sobs and distant sirens. He slowly unclenched, turning to her. His face was pale, etched with pain, but his eyes searched hers. "Are you hurt?" She reached out, her slender fingers touching the torn fabric on his shoulder. The gesture was answer enough. Later, in the medical wing, as drones tended to his wound, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but clear in the quiet room. "I was afraid of humanity. I thought your passion was a wildfire. I see now it is a forge. It made you into this, into a man who would stand against a storm for a stranger." He looked at her, his guard down, the soldier replaced by just the man. "Not a stranger," he said simply. The mandated courtship period ended. The Bureau expected their formal application for a breeding contract. Instead, they submitted a joint request for a bonding license, a human concept that involved no genetic mandates, only a choice. It was unprecedented. It was denied. They stood before the Bureau overseer, a tall, willowy Galath official who regarded them with polite incredulity. "The genetic optimization schedule is paramount. Your emotional attachment is noted, but the directive is clear. The pairing must proceed for progeny." The soldier spoke, his voice calm, but leaving no room for debate. "We are not a genetic recipe. We are two people. We will bond, or we will withdraw entirely." The overseer was scandalized. "Withdraw? The penalties are severe. Your citizenship allocations, your resource rights." "We understand," she said, finding her own voice, steady and firm. It echoed his calm. It was her own line to hold. "We will accept the penalties." They left the Bureau for the last time, not with a contract, but with each other. They built a life in one of the mixed species enclaves on the fringe of Directorate space. It was not an easy life. They had little, but they had a home, and on a quiet evening, under the light of a foreign moon, she told him she was ready. There was no fear in her now, only a profound, uncertain longing. The act was not a clinical breeding, but a communion. It was fierce and tender, a conversation of touch and breath, where his controlled passion met her empathic openness, not as a conqueror, but as a traveler finally coming home. It was the opposite of violation. It was a vow. When their daughter was born, she had her mother's silver-etched skin and her father's earth-sky eyes. She was healthy, strong, and her empathic signature was like nothing in the Galith records. It was not a placid lake. It was a vibrant, dynamic field, warm and resilient, capable of profound quiet and joyful noise. She was not a hybrid designed in a bureau. She was a child born of choice, of a bond forged in respect and tempered in a storm. Holding her daughter, she looked at her soldier, the man who had redefined strength for her. Her fear was a distant memory, a shadow dispelled by the simple, unwavering light of him. He had not bred her as the Directorate intended. Together, they had built a family. And in a galaxy of cold directives, that, she knew, was the most human thing of all.